This episode of Dopey is brought to you by our friends at Aloe Recovery, located in sunny Southern California and Silver Lake in Malibu, and created by Bob Forrest and Jared and Evan and Bob. And Aloe was created as a place where addicts can go to be treated with compassion rather than control. They treat co-occurring mental health disorders, including severe mental illness. They have amenities like you wouldn't believe. Surfing, fucking sound bath meditation, equine therapy, and even the super spiritual sweat lodge. They have years and years and years of making sure people detox comfortably. So if you're coming off of heroin, you're coming off of benzos, you're coming off of alcohol, Aloe knows how to take care of you. Basically, if you're fucked and you're willing to go to Southern California to get help, I would totally recommend going to Aloe.
Hello, Dopey Nation. My name is Patrick Ferguson. I'm the host of the Crash and Ride podcast. Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who survived anxiety, depression, and addiction. The idea was that if I could get musicians to talk honestly and openly about their struggles, that we could share some experience, strength, and hope and maybe start to get better. I'm a professional touring drummer and recovering addict based out of Athens, Georgia. I've been on tour since sometime in the 90s, and I've seen people who were really going through it, and I wanted to see if there was some way I could help. I had Dave from Dopey on episode 30. That was a few months ago. Episode 19, I talked to Riley Walker. That was a great talk. Episode 37, I had Patterson Hood from the Drive-By Truckers. And of particular interest to Dopey listeners, you might want to check out episode 27, where I talked to Christian Limbach from the Atlanta band Whores. He had a decade-long battle with heroin, and we really get down in it and talk about it. And I think Dopey listeners might take something away from that. You can hear any of those episodes and more at www.patreon.com/crashandride, or just search for Crash and Ride on your favorite podcast app. So stay strong, Dopey Nation, and remember, loud guitars save lives.
This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by listeners like you in the Dopey Nation through the Dopey Patreon page. You go to www.patreon.com/dopeypodcast. Throw down a few bucks to help make the podcast happier, more joyous, and more free, unless you don't want to, in which case you don't. I'm totally flirting with original, unique Patreon material. Look for it this week. If you guys want Dopey ski hats, because I don't say beanies anymore, if you want Dopey socks, if you want Dopey stickers, Venmo me at Dopey Podcast. There's a big Dopey shipment going out tomorrow. I've been crazy at work, so I'm a little bit swamped, so forgive me if you haven't gotten it. Also, all sorts of other Dopey paraphernalia is available at the website www.dopeypodcast.com. Enough with the ads. Here is the show. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And I'm Dave, and I'm very excited to have this next guest on the show. He is by no means a famous man, but he is very important to the history of Dopey and to me. I talk about you a lot on the show. You listen to the show. Do you hear me talk about you a lot on the show?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot, but once in a while, you kind of admit that you stole the podcast from me, just that, like, out of the blue.
All right, just slow down. You're jumping too far ahead. First, I'd like to introduce my old and dear friend and collaborator, Brad. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. You know, I was I on the first episode?
You were on
one of the first episodes.
You were on lots of early episodes.
I think I was on once.
No, I think you were on at least 3 times. Because I remember, like, I had you call in a couple times to, like, criticize the show, and a couple times, I think, but who knows?
Well, there was the one time when I was going to try and be your producer, so I was going to text you notes as you were going.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember the concept, but I remember that there was an episode we did where my buddy John came in to do the show, and he played sound effects. Yeah, Takeif. And Chris was so ADD that he couldn't pay attention to the conversation. So the idea of us being able to field text notes while we did the show and do the show seemed like a stretch to me.
Yeah, no, it wasn't working. We were doing it. It was like, Well, you were blaming Chris that like it was just throwing him off, and he's like every time that you get a text, he would like shut down, and so yeah. Anyhow, we iced that pretty quick, but then and then I started talking to you guys, and I don't know, it didn't go anywhere, and that was the last time we did it.
So. Well, the best thing was that when you were trying to produce the show via text, I would stop the show and I'd say, "Wait, Chris, Brad doesn't think this is a good thing to talk about," and that's
it's your fault.
Yeah, I'll take the blame.
You were supposed to just like integrate into your flow, not like shut down the show.
Listen, that's just how I do things. But more importantly, the story that I want to hear about is the origin. It's the origin story of Dopey. So I have a very, 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 very shitty memory. So why don't, and you don't? So why don't you tell the story?
Well, the origin story of the podcast, or of how we met, or what are you getting at?
Well, I want to hear the story about the podcast.
Well, the podcast was my podcast that you were my drug addict friend, and so I thought, over many years. How long were you using at that point? There's like 2010 or 12 or something. Like
a good while. I had used probably for like 15 years at that point, I think.
Yeah, a long time, a real long time. And for some reason I remained, your friend of some nature. And I talked to you through all of your rehabs, and I loved the stories and your stories, and it just made me think about, all the drug stories and like drug humor that I love, just drug humor in general. Like I could think of like scenes in movies and stuff. They're all like my favorite scenes. So I was like, well, maybe I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I'd never heard of a drug story podcast. I was thinking about something like The Moth, which is like a story slam kind of podcast where people would submit stories, but I was thinking also like it would be a thing maybe you and I could do. You would be the ex-drug addict or a drug addict du jour, and I would be the straight guy who's never been a drug addict. But
you've done drugs,
between the two of us. Oh, I've done lots of drugs, but I've never had an addict thing. I've always like reached a point very quickly where I felt, scared or bugged out if I was doing stuff too much.
I just want to say that your story is making me very sad. So you're saying that the point was you wanted to do a show like Dopey with me where I was the addict and you were the not addict. But that's not what I remember. Was you sent?
But hold on. But I sent you. So what I sent you was what I could do. Like one day I was just home alone. I'm like, I'm just gonna open my laptop and I'm going to just start talking and see what happens. And so I just started talking, and I was like, here's what I'm gonna do. I am going to talk to you and tell you about the podcast that I'd like to do, and I'm going to play some clips from things that are drug stories. But what I would actually like to do is have a talk show where we bring on famous guests and hear their drug stories, and we could play clips from different things. But what I can do right now is kind of just throw to clips. So that's what I sent you, and I explained to you what it is, and it's self-explanatory because that's all I talk about throughout the hour that I just kind of ramble on. And then I never heard from you about it.
We talked about it. What I remember is we talked about it. The fact that you live in California and I lived in New York came up for me as a stumbling block for doing the show. And I think I was using when you sent that to me. I remember hearing
using, and I could tell that you weren't really engaging, and you didn't actually probably listen to more than you probably listened to like 4 minutes and like, what the fuck? And
I think that's
jammed a needle in your arm and went to bed.
I think, well, I don't think I jammed a needle in my arm, but I think I drifted off. I think that you had also played some famous people's stories in the mix. No?
Yeah, I did, for sure. Yeah, I edited stuff in, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but let me just say...
So then, well, how about that? How about...
Can I ask you a question, Bradley? Wait up, Brad.
Yeah.
How many times have I apologized about this in the past 4 years?
Many, and we're past it.
It doesn't sound to me like you're past it, by the way. This story's, I feel like I'm going to start crying here.
Listen, the only reason why you're past it is because you you made this wonderful thing and have saved lives and made people's lives better. And I can't hold that against you. And, I didn't really think we would ever do it. I didn't really think that we were going to do this thing, right? I didn't. Like, it was an idea, something I just kind of threw out there. But when you did it with somebody else and then tried to tell me that it wasn't my idea, and you really did try to tell me it wasn't my idea, that was, mind-boggling to me. And, it was painful.
But I told Chris it was your idea.
Well, you gave me a whole different thing at first, and then you came around. That's what happened.
Listen, I have to say that I don't remember denying that it was your idea. I remember telling Chris. I remember being on the phone with Chris. I remember Chris wanting to do something, and I said, my friend Brad had this idea, but Brad's not a drug addict, and I just thought it would be a way for Chris to come hang out, and it was.
Right. Well, maybe in your mind it was so far removed from what you thought I was trying to do that it just was just like, yes, it has to do with drugs, but so does lots of things.
No, I'm going to say this. I apologize again for the billionth. No, I apologize. I apologize again. Yeah. And I don't think I consciously did it. Like, I think it was the kernel of the idea that what was Dopey. It was the total prototype for Dopey. But then because Chris was, we were drug addicts telling our drug stories, it became something very different, is really the point.
Yeah, right.
But now I feel bad, Now I feel bad.
Well, good. You should.
That's what I knew. That's the only reason you wanted to do this. You just wanted to make. I've given you credit
and make you suffer.
I mean, you want to make me feel bad on Dopey, and you've done it. So congratulations.
No, I don't. Look.
Yes.
You wanted to do this, and let's be totally honest. Let's kind of pull back the curtain for the Dopey Nation. You wanted to do this for shtick. We're doing shtick.
No, I wanted to do it because I think that I don't want to do shtick. The origin of Dopey is a story worth telling, and people are constantly,
very painful story of betrayal.
Dude, so you're not doing shtick though. You're not doing shtick.
This is shtick. Okay. Yes. No. It's a beautiful thing. Look, it's a beautiful thing. You save lives. You have thousands of fans that at least consider getting well, and maybe even if they're not considering it now, might in some future date that they never would have otherwise. And it's just an amazing thing. So,
well, I agree with you.
I can't be mad at that. Yes.
And I think that their sky is still the limit on stuff that we can make. And, you never know what is possible. I also think that because Chris and I were addicts, it drove him to be obsessed with doing the show. And I don't know that you and I would have done it every week religiously the same way Chris and I did.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I have very little faith that we would have followed through on it.
Right.
Under any circumstance.
You have to admit that the most shocking part about Dopey is not the legion of fans. It is not the lives being saved, but it is the fact that there was such follow through.
It is pretty shocking. I mean, it does, kind of follow exactly your trajectory of getting off drugs. So your history of not following through was completely your history of being a rabid drug addict. And so it's not mysterious or anything.
Okay, now why don't you tell the Dopey Nation about our history? This is a great segue.
No. Well, I said the word history, so. Yes. All right. So I don't know. How do you tell it? I'll tell you if you're right.
Okay. So Brad and I, years and years and years ago, in about 1998, or 99, I think 98, we worked at a production company in Manhattan called Burly Bear Network, which I've mentioned on the show a few times. And Brad was an editor in there, and I was a production assistant. And I got the opportunity to be like on talent host guy. And then, I don't know. I don't even remember how we crossed paths, though, Brad. Do you remember?
I remember I was, doing just, editing for different people. And then there was like just all these characters around who were like the Burly Bear primaries, which was like, Danny Emery, who was on the show a few weeks ago. It was basically his company. And then a few other guys that he had started the company with. And like, you were just like in some like bullpen office with them, I remember. And I walked in, you guys were all goofing around, probably actually like smoking pot in the office or something. I don't know why, but you just like kind of grabbed on me and like, we are going to do things. We were going to like, I don't know what you had at the time, but we were like, you wanted me to help you. Oh, you know what it was?
It was the lunchbox.
It was the lunchbox.
It was my great.
So you had heard that I was good. And so you just seized on me. And then that was kind of that. For whatever reason.
And Dopey Nation, just so you know, the Lunchbox was a game show that I invented where it was like a contestant goes to a public place and he has a hidden camera in his bag and there's other cameras around monitoring the contestant, and he wears a hidden microphone and he goes up to strangers, he or she goes up to strangers in Central Park to get them to say a list of words.
Yeah. And we did, you went out and shot with a couple of your friends. Was Aurora one of them?
No, I don't think so. No, me and Aurora were not speaking. It was Regis Philbin's daughter.
Yes, it was. And some other weird guy. And
John Wetterow. It was John Wetterow.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John just texted me that his girlfriend is like, you should listen to this podcast, and it was Dopey.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know. And I've told stories about me and John and Todd. No, it was me and John and Devin going to a Woodstock festival and cooking an ounce of mushrooms over a burning Village Voice in a can of like canned chili. And we all tripped out at the original site of Woodstock. And, wow. And also John also gave me a dose. It was the first time I ever punched anybody in the face, was tripping on John's acid. John's probably a good potential Dopey guest, actually.
Well, I want to hear that story.
Well,
I mean, not right now, but put that in the.
I'm going to tell it really fast. I was 17. Okay. We had a party at Jim's house. John gave me a bunch of acid to sell for people. I took a bunch of doses, and some kid went up to me and started annoying me. And I said, "Leave me alone, or I'm going to punch you in the face." And he wouldn't leave me alone. He was like, "Oh, oh, oh," and I punched him in the face. And
I can't imagine being violent on acid.
I know. I've never been violent since. So it was one of those things.
That's crazy.
So then you and I thought the Lunchbox wasn't as good as it should have been, but it was still pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you seen Billy on the Street? That's kind of like the Lunchbox.
But it's not a game show, right? It's just him talking to people.
Well, he gives people money if they kind of perform.
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. But you were ahead of I think every hidden camera or man on the street game show. I really think you were.
Well,
its time would come anyhow, but
it didn't come for us.
I don't think that anybody stole your idea like you stole mine, but you were the originator. You can have that.
All right, this is not the story that I want you to tell. The more important story is you having to suffer my drug addiction.
Yeah, so what happened was, the
resentment was born many years ago and is still blossoming with other resentments.
So what happened was, I guess we were thrown together to make a music video show, which was, this was
1999,
the late 90s. So music videos were still kind of a thing on TV. And it was and what Burly Bear was a block of programming that would be sent on VHS to college TV stations, and it would just supply them with like a block of original programming for like a couple hours with like the commercials baked in, and that's how Burly Bear would make their money. So one of the very simple shows that they had was just a block of music videos. And
they let me produce it. They let me produce it and host it. And they gave me a box full of videos. And the top video in the box was a video by KRS-One. And I looked in the Village Voice, and KRS-One was playing at Tramps, which was an amazing club in New York that's since closed down. And I called up his manager and I said, can we come interview KRS-One and shoot the live performance? And they were like, sure. And me and DK went to Tramps to shoot the KRS-One performance and interview. And it was like great, right?
Yeah, it was.
And that's when me and Brad were like, we don't want to do a video show.
Yeah, so we asked Danny Amory if we could do like a music magazine show where we just kind of take some cameras and run around New York and go see shows and try and get interviews with the artists, and Dave would host. And we had no idea what it would actually be, but Danny didn't seem to care either way, and he gave us a budget. What would he give us? Like $5,000 or $10,000 an episode?
I think it was more like I feel like it was like $1,300 an episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like nothing. It was like nothing.
Oh. Well, we didn't spend any of it, right? It was just like us running around with cameras, or your friends running around with cameras, and you'd pay them like $20.
No, I would pay my friends day rates, and that was the whole thing. And then I'd have to pay you. But I guess you were.
Oh yeah,
you weren't in the budget though.
Paid.
You were staff. Yeah. But I would pay my friends. That was it. Like DK and Ryan and John. I would pay those guys.
I mean, they were, kind of heady times because it was the .com boom, and like so people were just kind of like throwing around money, and we got to kind of ride that wave for a little bit. And so Danny's like, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want, and whatever we did, which was like we shot like the Flaming Lips.
We shot Pavement, Beanie Man, the Flaming Lips, fucking Eric B. and Rakim, De La Soul. We did a whole De La Soul special. Fucking, I can't think of it. Oh, Built to Spill.
We did an expose on how to get signed to a label. We did an expose on indie rock. We did one on reggae in New York.
Yeah.
Which was your favorite?
No, my favorites were KRS-One and the indie rock special. But the funniest one, and the reason that Dopey kind of exists and all of this stuff happened, was because we wound up doing a 2-part like long form documentary on the history of drugs. I think you had stopped working on the show then, but we did.
No, I worked on that. I did that.
We did the history of drugs, and the craziest part was that it was all my own personal drugs that we shot for the episode. And
that's the only reason why you did it, because you wanted to do that. You just wanted to go home and shoot your drugs on your table that you were so proud of.
I mean, that was part of it, but it was also just like it was a compelling story. You were just as interested in drug culture as I was. You just weren't as interested in drugs.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in actually living in drug culture, because the reality of it is much darker and scarier than the fun rock and roll lifestyle that I kind of thought I wanted.
Well, the other interesting thing is that when I met Brad, I hadn't been doing heroin at all. When we met, I hadn't.
When we first met, no.
No. So Brad and I were the closest of friends as I became a heroin addict. And Brad and I were partners on this show as I became addicted to heroin. And Brad had to deal with me on a daily basis. And it started almost innocuously, where I would get dope and I would fall out in the edit suite, and I would nod out when I would be interviewing people. But it just, in the beginning, there was still enough energy to carry me through. And it's kind of that classic opiate addict thing where like 18 months, 20 months, 2 years in is when you can't do it anymore. And I think I had that exact trajectory.
I don't know. I think it was a lot faster than that.
Okay, well,
I think it's probably a solid year. But in that time, like, I had zero idea about drug addiction, about heroin addiction. Like, I think that's where you kind of, told me what nodding out meant. I never heard that term before. You know, I didn't know anything about addiction, so I would like just totally support you in it and enable you like to an insane degree. I'd like, you know, give you money and bail you out of all these situations, and did not really feel like it was a big deal, but it was definitely a big deal.
You didn't know any better. You also did a bunch of drugs with me in the beginning.
Well, I tried becoming a heroin addict with you, but I couldn't hack it. Thank God.
It just didn't take.
It was rock and roll. Like we could have been a band, and we would have been 20-somethings in a band, and you'd be fucking up, and I would be completely oblivious to what that means. I mean, it was the same kind of thing.
It was, and they
like, we got to keep the band going. We got to keep this thing alive. Doesn't matter. I'll bail you out. We have the show to do. It's the same thing.
But you definitely realized at some point within the year to 2 years that I was not going to propel you anywhere, and you bailed on the whole thing because it was probably very boring to deal with somebody who was constantly fucking everything up.
Well, boring is generous. I mean, it's beyond boring. It's like, you know, completely
painful.
You know, debilitating, and makes it, you know, it was impossible to make the show. It was impossible to deal with anything and get anything done. We were failing. And you were failing, and you were, you know, it wasn't going to keep going. And Burly Bear was failing. Like the .com boom had busted in that time. And Burly Bear, was right there, you know, as one of those video streamers of the future that busted with all the rest of them. And yeah, so that all happened at once. So I left when that happened. Do
you remember? I remember like one thing I remember really well. It was like that it was like experiencing withdrawal, doing work there. Like I would come into work and I wouldn't have dope, and I knew I was on the clock for when I was going to get sick. And I would sit at the phone dialing the dealer's numbers, praying that they call me back.
Well, you've talked about, you know, because we had like all these opportunities to go, like you were asked to host like weird kind of like spring break.
Oh yeah.
Burly Bear spring break.
Yeah.
Like their MTV spring break version of Burly Bear. Like,
yeah.
So when I would go with you to do that, but you'd be dope sick the whole time, or, you know, trying to score. Stuff like that. We went to Jamaica.
Oh my God. Tell that story. That's the fucking classic story.
Well, I wish I understood it better, but for some reason, like the Jamaican Tourist Bureau wanted Burly Bear to go.
It sounds like a scam in retrospect. Doesn't it sound like a scam?
Yeah, no, it was. It was shady as hell, because it was all these shady characters that were kind of taking us around these areas of Jamaica that were. I don't know. I don't know what the game was, but they just wanted to, you know, be able to advertise on Burly Bear, or, you know, have some kind of relationship. So Burly Bear sent some people down, and they sent us for some reason, because we were like the nearest warm bodies.
No, it was because they knew I loved reggae. They sent us because they knew I loved reggae music.
But that's crazy, because what they needed was like, you know, like salespeople, like, you know, people to close the deal with these Jamaican wheelers and dealers, and we were like totally out of our element, and you were high and I was useless, but we went there, and I just watched you, you know, try to score drugs for a bunch of days, and
that's the one.
And that's what all these things were like.
No, but that story was, we were going to Jamaica for 5 days, and it was before 9/11. And I brought like 65 bags of heroin with me on that trip, and I brought them all in my pocket. You know, I remember being at the airport with 6.5 bundles, because I probably had done the half of the 7th bundle that morning on the way, and I was feeling very wealthy when we got there. You know, and I was just doing dope willy-nilly. And then there's like 2 days left, and I fucking run out of dope. And I just start freaking out, and I go down to the beach to start talking to Jamaicans about getting heroin. I did my crazy, or my classic street line when I needed heroin, which is going up to strangers and say, I don't want to freak you out, but do you know where I can get some heroin? And in Jamaica, they don't have heroin, or at least where we were, they didn't have heroin. They had coke. They just had Coke and bad weed, which is depressing as hell. But so I remember being like, don't you have anything down? And they had Valium. And they gave me I bought all the Valium I could get. So I just started taking Valium, and you and me went on some booze cruise. And you got drunk, and I just started taking the Valiums, and I fell out on the deck of the boat.
No, I took the Valium. I took Valium too, and I thought, I'll take Valium. I get seasick, but I think the Valium will help with that. And instead, it just made it way worse, and I was like the worst seasick I've ever been, or anybody could ever be. And so I was just splayed out on the boat the whole time. And I don't know what you were doing, but it just fucked me up.
I was almost unconscious. And then the next day we flew home. Then on the plane, I went into full on heroin withdrawal on the plane. And I started trying to sneak into first class. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember you were in some kind of half catatonic state and, kicking and literally kicking the seat in front of you, pissing off this guy in front of you, and stewardesses were coming by every 2 minutes to tell you to stop. And you were... Is that what they call it, kicking? Because it actually makes your leg kick?
I think that's what they say. And I was so uncomfortable and so sick that I was like, I can't do it. And I got out of the chair and I wandered up to first class. And I've never flown first class before or since. I've never flown first class. And I got in the chair, right? And I put a blanket on me and I'm just shivering in the chair. And the lady's like, you can't sit here. You got to go back to coach. And I went back to coach, and then I went back to first class. And she goes, I just said you can't sit here. And I said, listen, lady, I'm really sick. Just leave me alone and let me sit here. And she did, I think. I can even feel it in my body right now telling you the story. And it's how many years ago is that? It's more than 22 years ago, right?
Oh, my God, yeah.
It's 21 years ago that story happened.
Yeah. Well, I just remember just watching, your life get worse and worse. And I remember, when I first knew you, you had this New York apartment that was somehow, in your family, and it was your apartment that your parents had kind of set up for you. And you had this most amazing situation. And you were the luckiest kid in the world. And then a year later, I go to your place, and it has basically been taken over by drug dealers, and you're in there with three
Spanish drug dealers who are selling ecstasy out of my apartment.
Sitting at a table. It was like a movie.
We're playing dominoes.
I don't know if the guy was making a deal when I walked in or something. He's sitting at a table with another guy. They do something, and the guy leaves. He's just sitting there at the table, kind of holding court. And there's two other guys, sitting by you, and you're just sitting there happy as can be.
Well, the funny thing,
and I'm supposed to sit there and hang out with you.
Right. And I'm like, what the fuck,
where
man?
are you going? I'm like, I'm going. I'm gone. And that was pretty much, that was all I could take. So I remember that being probably the last time I came over. And
I remember I got super sick. I went into full-on withdrawal, and I told you, and you called the supermarket or something, and they delivered me this box of delicious food. You sent me soup and crackers and bread and shit. It was the nicest thing ever. Do you remember that?
Oh, no, because I don't think that was me.
It was definitely you.
It doesn't sound like me.
It doesn't sound like you, but it was totally you. And Brad was a great friend. And the fucked up thing to me is I do this show that I stole from Brad.
Let me just roll back a second. What was that situation with the guy? You basically had a deal with the drug dealer that they could use your space and you'd get drugs. And how long did that go on? What was that arrangement?
Basically, it was the son of my neighbor across the hall. And something had gone wrong in her house, and he was bugging out, and he was like, I need a place to keep the safe. And I said, I'll let you keep the safe here if you give me X amount of money every month. And he would give me coke and ecstasy too. And I mean, that was when I was shooting just straight coke when I couldn't get dope. And I was selling ecstasy around the city. I mean, that was a really like crazy time because I wasn't just doing heroin. It was a weird time. Most of my drug addiction was just me doing heroin in a room. But because I was connected to those guys, they also had killer bud. They had a lot of good weed. And I would.
Were you doing a lot of ecstasy?
I had like a month where I did a bunch of ecstasy. I remember I went to a Halloween party with like 100 pills, and I sold them all, and I took a bunch of pills, and that was like, there was a period where I took a bit of ecstasy. I really liked how ecstasy made me feel, but it was just almost too strong. It wasn't a drug that I could do on the regular because the next day it was too much for me.
Right. No, you're drained of all of your life force.
I do remember, my favorite, it's funny because I live this total suburban middle class life now. I have 4.5 years and I do this podcast. And even though the podcast is about, and I work in a deli, and even though the podcast is about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit, I often feel totally disconnected from what I've done, from the way I was. Or whatever. Yeah. And I feel like
that makes sense.
This conversation has really brought it back. Like I feel it. Like I can feel it in my arms and stuff. This kind of weird chill. Because I was in bad shape, right? You knew me in bad shape.
Well, yeah, it's funny when you talk about it on the podcast, and especially even like, more recent times, closer to now, you really downplay like how bad you were. And I guess when you live in a world of other drug addicts, you are a garden variety.
I'm totally just a garden variety drug addict, but I was bad.
But your life was just completely,
bereft.
It was just doing drugs. Like you didn't have anything else. You didn't have a job. You didn't go anywhere. For a long time you just did drugs. But Dave, are we like going off on stuff that we care about, and is this just us?
These are Dopey stories. No, these are Dopey stories.
These are good. This is good.
Yeah,
I don't know, people will let us know, right? I guess they'll let us know the hard way.
The more important piece is that after that was the high point of my drug addiction. That lasted like 2 years, and then I got fired.
The high point of it being on the up, like you were having fun with it.
Exactly. Then it tailspin to 11 years or more of nothing. 14 more years of nothing. 8 years in Los Angeles just on methadone. Just tell them what it was like living with me in California.
Well, okay, so you moved to California with your girlfriend. Do we use your girlfriend's name?
No, we don't.
With your girlfriend, and she was like your sugar mama, and you guys lived poorly in a very small duplex in Echo Park. It was kind of a cool place, actually. Echo Park, California is a cool
it wasn't that cool then, though.
Well, where you guys were, like, it's kind of block to block, and your block was sketchy as hell. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Like, where your house was super sketchy, and you were a big part of that sketch, by the way.
Yeah.
And she would go to work, and you would stay home and do drugs and watch The Sopranos and Lost, right?
And eat ice cream sandwiches, yeah.
And take walks to Vaughn's to get an ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I would come over there, and it's just funny because like it was the same thing. Like when I would go to your apartment in New York, like I'm very sensitive. Like I know this about myself from dealing with you, that I would come to your house, and being there with you, I would feel oppressed. Like I would feel like a spiritual, as a crushing inside being in that place with you, and I would have to get away.
Yeah, well, it was bad. I was in bad shape.
Yeah, but some people can just hang. I mean, and that's just it's just an interesting thing. Like, why I think about that personally because I always did identify as from a fairly young age, from like I probably smoked pot for the first time. Well, I definitely smoked pot for the first time in 8th grade. And I always just wanted to identify as a pothead. And then I wanted to be, you know, like a hippie kind of styled, you know, drug taker. I was into the Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd and shit like that. And I just kind of identified with rock and roll culture and drugs and stuff, but I never had, you know, the heart for it. And, you know, thank God, you know.
Totally. Also, though, in that period, it was beyond any sort of rock and roll culture. It was total. It wasn't even debaucherous. It was total bereft. It was like I would be on a handful of pills, a bottle of methadone, and like if I could afford a bag of dope, I would take a bag of dope, and it would be just I'd be in a bathrobe watching Lost and taking bong hits. You know what I mean?
Dude, I could get behind that. I've like kind of had a good career, and it's taken, you know, some ambition, right? But I've never been an ambitious person. Like I could be happy just like staying home and watching TV all day.
Right.
You know, like if that was afforded to me somehow.
Right.
Like if I got super rich, I would not work. I would not work.
Right.
Period.
I would.
I would not.
Well, I'm crazy with this stuff.
So the fact that, you know, I, you know, apply drugs to that, and that's a perfect lifestyle. Yeah, I don't know.
But that's a weird thing. You know what I mean? It's like you think, you know, it's like I love watching TV as much as anybody and doing nothing as much as anybody, but I'm super driven. And maybe I think I've always been super driven, but I'm also just like playing catch up big time, you know? But I think, you know, I think that these stories are worth telling because I often talk recovery, which is a good thing to talk. And I don't think if you had asked me when I was in those stories if I ever thought I would ever find recovery, there's no way that I would have. You know, recovery was nowhere near me when you and I were in those periods. I was such a fucking miserable drug addict. It wasn't even a possibility. You know, it was not close. So the fact that I could get sober and change, it's like it's a real testament to like the way humans are built, and that any drug addict can do it. Because you never would have thought that I could do it.
Yeah, I never thought you were going to get at a certain point. I thought you would never get better, except for I did have the notion that if you ever had a kid, that you would not continue to be a piece of shit if you had a kid, that it was not in you, in your upbringing, in yourself, that I thought that would be the thing. I just could not imagine you carrying on like that. And it was true. It was also, I think, two things. Like, yes, the only reason why you got better is because you had a kid, and also because you aged out. Like
right.
I think a lot of people do, right? So it was kind of having a kid later. But you're in your late 30s.
I was the same. I was 35.
You're 35. So yeah. So you were,
But I didn't get clean when I was 35.
It was kind of a confluence.
I didn't get clean then. I got clean 6 years later. I was trying to get clean for the 6 years.
You were trying.
Yeah.
You were really trying.
Yeah.
You just didn't know that like the key was to actually give up drugs, like give up weed.
Yeah.
You just would not let that go.
I know. Yeah. So now let's move past our past stories and how great I'm doing now and the fact that I stole Dopey from you, and let's move on to how great Dopey is.
Yeah.
Just briefly.
Well,
tell them how great it is. I in
some of that earlier. It's how amazing is Dopey that I mean,
let me ask you this.
It's not even like I don't even know what you do anymore, It's like it's not really about Dopey stories, and you're not like preaching recovery. I don't know what it is, but like it's people fucking love it.
Well, you listen to it. You're a big time Dopey listener.
I know. I listen to every episode, and every single episode. Now, I fall asleep to every episode.
Well, that's not good. All right, Bradley, you got to go. Yeah. What was that sound? That was like the sound that times up.
That was the band playing me off.
All right.
I just picked up a guitar. automatically without thinking.
Plunking away in the edit suite. So up next, we have wall-to-wall Jews on Dopey these days. We had, Handsome Dick was totally, as he was old Jewish rocker, and you are a terrific specimen of Semitism and or Semiticness. I wouldn't say Semitism; it's Semiticness, right?
Semiticity.
I don't think that's a word. And up next, we have this dude named Asher, who is in recovery, and he runs some treatment stuff. So, you excited to hear Asher?
Well, wait, why is he on the show?
I don't know. He's an addict. He's an alcoholic and an addict.
And he runs some treatment stuff.
He's an alcoholic and an addict, and he helps addicts get clean. He runs some sober living.
How do you know him?
I met him through Dopey. I was on his podcast, so he comes on Dopey.
That's reason enough.
Does that sound like an enthusiastic introduction? This is not a good introduction.
I know. I'm just fucking with you. That's great. I'm really excited to hear from him. Am I going to actually hear it sitting on the phone with you?
No, you're done. This is it for you. Do you have anything else you want to say to the Dopey Nation before you're gone?
No.
That's it?
Yeah, fuck off.
Fuck off. That's a terrible message.
No, I love each and every one of you, and do not fuck off. Everybody, I wish the best for you, Dopey Nation, and try to get better, try to stay well, get sober, listen to Dave, listen to his preaching.
Don't listen to me.
Listen to Dave's constant preaching and
don't listen to me.
And proselytizing about
recovery
and recovery and God bless each and every one of them.
Oh, God. This is the worst sign-off I've ever heard in the history of fucking Dopey. But thank you, Brad.
I don't have a prepared speech. Okay.
I appreciate you coming on. I love you. I'm sorry I stole the podcast from you. But if it wasn't for you, there would be no Dopey.
All right. Well, if the Dopey Nation can, show some appreciation as well, that would be cool.
Yeah, all praise and love due to Brad. Because without Brad, there would be no Dopey.
Yeah, it's just a small altar, nothing too fancy.
All right. Thank you, Bradley.
All right. Bye.
Bye. So that was my old and dear friend, Bradley. Love having Brad on the show. I love all Dopey memory lane. It just reminds me of how far I've come. And, someone said to me today, do I have any regrets? And I have tons of regrets. But they said, would you change anything in your life? And obviously the first thing that pops into my head is I wouldn't become a drug addict. But the truth is, if I didn't become a drug addict, I wouldn't have my life, and I wouldn't have my kids, and I wouldn't have my family. So I think I also liked a lot of the time that I did the drugs, and I really like who recovery made me into. So I'm going to say that I wouldn't change that stuff. But I would have rather been a better guitar player, and I would have rather pursuing music at some point. But I like my life. Anyway, next up, we have this dude. He is a former cokehead, alcoholic, in recovery. He also happens to be the first rabbi ever to come on Dopey. He does a podcast called Showing Up with Asher G. Asher Gottesman. All right, so a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, this man came to my father's apartment, and we were supposed to record Dopey, and we were supposed to record his podcast. I'll say his name. It's Asher Gottesman. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
Or welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. I had the fortunate, distinct pleasure of chewing nicotine gum with Asher and tripping out. I was it was like shooting meth for me. 4 years clean chewing nicotine gum was serious. You're chewing it now?
I'm not chewing it right now, but I may chew it during the show.
Do you get that rush?
I don't get that rush anymore. It kind of works like benzos or drugs in general, right? The more you use, the less you get.
When you started chewing nicotine gum, did you get the rush, or was it just to replace the cigarettes?
So it was really interesting. I actually quit smoking in a spiritual way. Is very weird to say. I had a guy named Ralph, unfortunately he's passed away, that couldn't get sober. And I actually gave him $20, and I said, go downtown and go get high and get it the fuck out of my life. I can't do this anymore.
You wanted Ralph out of your life?
I wanted Ralph out of my life.
Was Ralph somebody that you were trying to help?
Yeah, Ralph was somebody who I loved. I was so close to. I actually confiscated from him 1,000 80s.
OxyContin.
Yes,
I never
OxyContin.
did an OxyContin.
Oh, really? Me neither.
Okay.
I've done Percocet, Vicodin, and some of the other ones, but I never did an OxyContin. So I confiscated. That was about, I don't know, $40,000-$50,000 worth of pills.
Wow.
And flushed it down the toilet.
Where were they? In his house?
No, they were in my sober living.
So he's living in your sober living. He's got $50,000 worth of OxyContin in the house.
In the house.
And how did you find them?
I did a search.
So you show up for a random search, and he has $40,000 or $50,000 worth of pills in your sober house.
Now, I only found this out afterwards because they're pills. There were 1,000 pills. And he was crying while I was flushing it down the toilet.
Well, he had the option to leave. Or could he not leave with the pills?
No, he couldn't leave with the pills.
So he was going to lose the pills.
The pills were done.
So tell me the story of Ralph.
So Ralph was a kid from an Orthodox family, sweetheart of a kid, probably one of the best manipulators I ever met, would get all his drugs from doctors. And I threw him out of our sober living. I got him into a treatment center. He got thrown out of that. And I'd pick him up every time, and he was just a sweet kid, and yet he was a great drug addict. I don't know, or bad drug addict. Whatever.
Well, there's lots of sweet.
I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you.
A lot of sweet. And finally, I said to him, Ralph, here's the deal. I can't do this anymore. You're killing me, and here's $20. Go downtown and go get high, and call me when you're ready. And he goes, and I walked away, actually, and he says to me, you know what, I'm ready. And I said, okay. And he detoxed on a couch, and I sent him to program, what was it called? It was a 90-day program in Barracks, basically. It was a free program. It was, well, I can't even remember the name. It was in Castaic Lake. It's no longer. And
that's California, Castaic Lake?
Castaic Lake is in California, and it was an alternative sentencing program. It was free. And there was no drugs there. You know, there was no pills there. There was no dual diagnosis there. Literally, you lived in barracks and you went to meetings. And he called me up and he said to me, Ash, I got to say thank you because not only am I 2 years sober, but I got 2 weeks off cigarettes.
Because they don't let you smoke there.
Well, no, this is 2 years later. This is, he smoked, he actually didn't smoke there. He got out of there and smoked. And he said to me, I got 2 years. And at that moment, I was like, what am I going to have to get emphysema? And I was already.
Because how much were you smoking?
I was smoking a pack a day.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And fucking Ralph gets 2 weeks and you're smoking and Ralph shamed you into quitting, basically.
Ralph shamed me into quitting. And I actually was speaking at a meeting that night. And all I spoke about was quitting smoking.
So how did it become a spiritual thing?
Because to me, it was the moment he said it, I had that bottom, and it was just, to me, it was spiritual because I was able to hear from somebody that I was in the reverse position of, or thought I was in the reverse position of, which kind of was a lot of lessons that I can get into, thinking when I started working with drug addicts and alcoholics in recovery with my centers. I thought I was saving lives, and I've quickly learned that I'm only here to help people help themselves.
Right, because you can't save anybody.
No, and yet I had this savior complex, and I was, bigger than life, and I'm so great, and I was knocked off that pedestal many times, and yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's hard to get on a pedestal without getting knocked off,
Yet Ralph said this to me, and I was like, wow, and I just quit. And I don't know, Groucho Marx or somebody said, quitting smoking's easy. I've done it 1,000,000 times, So
right.
I just quit. 30 days later, I was like, oh shit, I want to smoke, and I just picked up nicotine gum.
When was that?
6 years ago, 7 years ago.
So now you're hooked on the nicotine of nicotine gum, or you just like it?
I like it. I'm probably hooked on it. I quit it for a life insurance exam 2 years ago, and then I stopped for about 2 years, and then I just picked it up one day, and I haven't stopped again.
I know Bob Forrest loves nicotine gum, and I know Mark Maron is fucking hopeless. Oh, maybe he quit the nicotine gum. I think Maron quit the nicotine gum. But I know that I loved smoking, but I never saw myself as going to be a lifelong smoker. I never thought that could be.
Right.
I never saw myself as a lifelong drug addict either. But and I couldn't stop smoking. And in the end, I quit smoking with one of those bullshit kind of like the store-bought vapes, the blue ones, the
yeah.
fake cigarettes. And that's how I quit smoking. I didn't consider nicotine gum because your nicotine gum was good though. It had like a good flavor. Every piece of nicotine gum I ever had before that wasn't good, and I couldn't get hooked on the vape because it was just too messy for me. The blue was the thing that was satisfying about cigarettes was smoking.
Right.
The smoke, the burning, all that shit. I loved that shit. I liked the speedy feeling of the nicotine gum, but not enough. Like that shit bugs me out. Like I'm a nervous person. You know, like if I get more speedy, I like the idea because I could lose weight probably quickly on that shit. I think it's a good appetite suppressant. I don't think I ate dinner that night when we did the show. I'm serious. But yeah, I think I thought about getting like I haven't used drugs in a long time, but when I was like maybe I should get some Klonopin or something because the nicotine gum was very strong. But Asher is a very interesting person, a crazy, diverse background. But the way you qualify for Dopey is you're a drug addict.
I am. I open up my qualifications always saying I grew up like everybody else in this room, the son of an Orthodox rabbi.
Right.
So, but I am a drug addict.
You're the son of an Orthodox rabbi, though.
I'm proof.
You grew up in L.A.
I grew up in Beverly Hills. I always say the poor parts of Beverly Hills.
And you're proof that some Jews can be drug addicts.
Right, exactly. Right. Jews can be drug addicts.
Whenever I say that to a Jew, I always like kind of act like Jewish drug addicts are rare to Jewish, and it's like half of the people that I talk to are Jewish drug addicts. I mean, there's a lot of us.
Yes.
There's a lot of us. What was the first, how did you discover your own kind of addictism, whatever?
So my ism started with lying, actually. You know, as a kid.
I think mine did too.
You know, as a kid, I told everybody I was in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And who were you?
And I didn't even see the movie, so I didn't know who I was. I wasn't even a good liar.
Do you remember how that story came to you?
I was in class and...
why Raiders?
I don't even know, because I thought it was a cool movie. Harrison Ford was this cool guy. Yeah. I didn't know his name then, right?
But that was your line. That I was in Raiders.
Yeah, I was in Raiders, and then it was kosher food. You know, my friends would bring non-kosher food to school, and I can only have kosher food at home. So I said, well, if you give me a piece, I'll tell you it's kosher. So
you're like fake blessing their food?
Oh, yeah, I was fake blessing their food. And my friend always would give me his non-kosher food because he thought it was really funny. And I thought it was great because it tasted better than my shit.
So that was like your first kind of walk on the wild side?
That was my walk on the wild side. And then it actually started with food. And when I was 8 years old, my parents left me with a newlywed couple.
Where did they go?
In Israel.
Okay.
They went back to America. They took a year sabbatical and went back to America for 6 weeks. And I used to have fears of the night, so I used to sleep in my parents' closet, actually. And so my first night with this newlywed couple, I think they were in their early 20s. I knocked on their door late at night, and I was like, did my parents tell you about my little problem?
And what did they say?
And they're like, what little problem? I said, well, I can't sleep alone. And I crawled into the middle of the bed.
Wow.
So that was my first experience with an older woman.
I'm sure they're qualifying about that in some meeting right now.
Right. They're in Trauma Anonymous.
Right. From or Sex and Love Anonymous. What happened to little Asher? So that's interesting, though, because I can relate to both of those things. I grew up a liar and scared of the night. When I was a kid, I would go into my parents' room, and my parents. An interesting thing is my dad hates it when I blame him for my drug addiction, but I really it's a good shtick for me. I don't blame anybody for anything. But when I was a little kid, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would be terrified. I'd just be terrified. And my parents would not come into my room. They wouldn't come, sit there. I, still fucking lie in the bed with my daughter if she's scared. And,
absolutely.
My parents would never go in there. So their solution was they bought a mattress, and they put it on the terrace. And if I woke up scared in the middle of the night, they said, you could get the mattress and put it on the floor in our room. And that's what I did from when I was, 6 to when I was, 10. Every night I would wake up, and I would drag the mattress in there. And I was just terrified. It's interesting, though, because I don't hear that story very often. Dad, you have a comment on this, by the way? I see you lurking out there.
What are you talking about?
We're talking about the fact that you fucked up your son because you put a mattress on the terrace when it was negative 72 degrees.
Do you remember?
And he was scared of the night.
Dad, welcome back to the show. Do you remember when I was a youth, a child, and I would wake up scared in the middle of the night? Do you remember this?
Barely, yes.
Here, come.
Yeah.
Do you remember that rather than coming and comforting me, you sent me to the terrace to get a mattress so I could sleep on the floor next to your bed?
I remember you coming into the bed with me and Mom, and that's where you stayed.
You gotta be kidding me. I was slept on a mattress for years next to your bed.
Next to the bed, indoors, not on a terrace
But
outside.
certainly not in the bed. Did I ever sleep in the bed with you?
Well, yeah, probably, and that's why we kicked you out and put you on the mattress next to it.
Yeah, they have a small bed, it's true. But the best thing was that my dad always slept with an aluminum bat under the bed. So when I was scared, I would have my hand on the bat for comfort. Just in case anybody came, he could beat them with the bat.
Where's the minus 72 degrees come
I don't know,
from?
that was
No, the minus 72 degrees came in from the fact that he said that the mattress was on the terrace.
Well, he assumed I was sleeping on the terrace.
He was not on the terrace.
All right, goodbye. Go do your thing.
I thought you were going to ask me an important question.
Well,
No.
we will one
No.
day. We will one day ask you about the Orthodox atheism.
I'm brilliant.
You want to bore? You want to put the Dopey Nation to sleep? Let's go for it. So you work with a ton of addicts.
Yes.
So you're more familiar with these stories than I am. Do you hear a lot of that story? Like a lot of people that are just scared in general, like in their childhood?
Yeah, I do hear a lot of stories where people are scared in general from reasons that they don't even know, and then scared in general because of
Trauma.
Terrible shit that happened to them.
In my life, I cannot trace my fear to a specific trauma. And then the other thing is that when I look at, like, I gave up trying to decipher why am I an addict. Like, I gave up on that question. But I know one of the things was that I just wanted not to care so much.
Right.
Like, that was the biggest attraction, to finally not give a fuck. Like, everybody's like, I don't give a fuck. I really gave a fuck about everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're a liar and you're scared of the night, and how did it turn into drugs?
So first it turned into food, because I would go to the market to soothe, because I felt guilty or shameful. Not guilty, shameful about going into these people's bed. So I would eat ice creams in the middle of the night at 8 years old.
So you're 8. You get into the young couple's bed, and where does the ice cream come in?
After school every day, I would walk.
Because you'd feel guilty
Yeah.
at the end of the day. You'd be like, I can't believe you're an 8-year-old worrying about sleeping in this. That's all very, like, that might be trauma.
Yeah.
Do you think it was traumatizing that your parents left you with this couple?
100%. Actually, my first trauma was I called my sister Mom, because my mom was Ima,
Right.
which means mom in Hebrew.
Sure.
And all my friends had a mom, and I didn't have a mom. And I used to call her Mom. And then
How old was your sister?
She was 16 when I was born. I'm the youngest by 8.5 years.
How many brothers and sisters?
I'm one of 5.
Okay, that could be traumatic in itself.
Yeah, and I have 5.
Wow.
So
the circle is completed.
The circle's completed. I didn't have cable TV, so I decided to have kids.
Wow. So do you have cable now or no?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was either cable or snipping.
So, snipping. So we're talking about fucking 8 years old, self-medicating, ice cream in the afternoon, and sleeping with strange people in bed to deal with your fear.
Totally.
And when did the transition happen from food, lying, and fear into alcohol and drugs?
So it happened at about 13. I didn't want to be a husky size for my bar mitzvah. And my parents told me that if I lost the weight, they'd buy me a nice suit for my bar mitzvah. So
it's great to be 13 and you have to lose weight. You go on a weight. It's like you don't have enough fucking terrible shit at 13. Okay.
Right.
I'm with you.
And I lost 36.5 pounds in 6 weeks on the puffed rice and Diet Coke diet.
So 13 years old, you're just eating puffed rice and Diet Coke.
Skim milk, puffed rice, and Diet Coke. That was I was passing out during the day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was 5 feet tall. So 36.5 pounds at 5 feet is a lot of weight.
And you learned that magical thing of how to add something or take away something to change you.
100%.
And that was the thing.
I was anti-drugs, completely anti-drugs. And then I went to some Jewish retreat, and my boys were smoking weed out of a Coke can.
In L.A. or in Israel?
In L.A. And I was 14. And I was like, you know what? Let me try this shit. And I'm not sure I got high, but I felt great.
Because you were included, or
yeah. I was cool, and then that was it. I was off to the races. I had a friend whose dad grew weed in the house, and I used to steal his weed, so I always had weed for everybody. So then I was totally cool. And then I had a girl who said, if you smoke, it hurts your lungs, so let's do acid, because that's healthy.
Sure. Well, the thing about acid, it's very small volume. That's the thing about acid. It's like not a lot.
Right.
So you started tripping at what point?
A year later.
So you're 15. Are you in Jewish school?
Yeah.
Is everybody on drugs in Jewish school?
No, actually, there were like 4 of us, maybe 5 of us, but we were considered the cool kids that were smoking weed. I wouldn't do hallucinogenics, LSD, tabs, whatever you want to call them, in front of my friends because I thought I'd be judged. But this girl was really hot.
So you tripped out,
and she wasn't Jewish, and that was wow. If I can get in her pants.
So you took acid with her?
Yeah, I took acid to be with her.
Did that work out?
It did.
All right, well, good deal.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
So
it didn't work out so well at the Grateful Dead concert.
What happened? Tell me the story. What year is it?
1990, 89.
And Jerry is probably not on heroin that year.
Probably not.
I think that's when he just got out of the coma around then. Those are supposedly really... I saw the Grateful Dead in 91, and that was the first dose I ever took, and I don't remember the Dead being there. You know what I mean?
I remember it was actually not the Dead show. It was Rob Weir and Rob Wasserman.
Okay.
2 members of the Dead in a small club in Oxnard. And all I remember is I went with my friends, with 2 friends, and I took LSD or what? No, I think it was shrooms. And the roof started coming in on me, and I just had to take off. And I just disappeared. I have no idea how I got home. I don't know what happened. I got home. Everything was fine, but I was scared shitless.
It was not a pleasant experience.
No, it wasn't a pleasant experience, yet I still love getting high. So I just stuck with weed primarily and drinking.
So you weren't like a psychedelics guy?
No, that scared the shit out of me, and I just stopped.
I always liked doing psychedelics, but I also felt like it was like a lot of work. Like at the end, I was just like, it's too much work for me to dose but when I was taking psychedelics, it was like, it was very much like I was in bands, and it was exciting, but I had so much self-hatred that it would become like a lot of work, and a lot of just fear. But I like tripping. I would say I like tripping, and my addict in me didn't come out. I could be like, nah, I tripped on Saturday, I'm not tripping on Wednesday. I also sold a ton of acid. So I had a ton of acid, and everybody was always tripping around me, and I would sell acid. But I didn't like tripping more than once a week. It just seemed like...
That was more than once a week is too much
for me.
It's a good drug addict, right? Because normal people don't say, "Oh, I'll trip acid once a week and I'm not a drug addict."
Well, I think what about this whole new microdosing phenomenon?
So I was actually going to say that I go to men's group. So we'll get into recovery later. Yet part of my journey in recovery is I have men that I trust, and we meet 4 times a year to talk about our real shit. And ayahuasca.
Do you take ayahuasca?
No, I haven't done any of it, yet I'm considering it. And I can't believe I'm saying it on this. I haven't done it because I'm not comfortable walking into any room of our fellowship and saying it out loud. So unless I'm willing to do that, I'm not going to do it.
My wife was like, they have these places in Costa Rica, these resorts, where you go and you trip ayahuasca, and then you lay in the hot tub and go in a mud bath and shit. And she's like, it's too bad you're sober, because we could go trip ayahuasca and go to a resort, whatever. And I'm like, well, lots of people consider it, a spiritual quest. But the truth is, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to fuck up everything that I have.
Right.
There's probably some sort of level of spirituality that I could reach from tripping ayahuasca or microdosing, but I think for me it's a wash.
So it was actually last April. I was in a depression. Mm-hmm. I was in a dark space, and I was looking for a way out. Mm-hmm. And that's when I considered doing it. And it was, interestingly enough, I brought it up 3 months ago, but I'm not in that place now. So
You feel too good to be tripping ayahuasca.
yeah, I was like, why am I going to do it? And it's funny. You should tell your wife to go do it, because I'm pretty sure that she'd trip ayahuasca and start throwing up and shitting herself. And I'm pretty sure that she wouldn't consider it a great
No,
experience.
I think that she's curious about it. You know, I took ibogaine years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't have the best experience on it, but it was funny. It's a funny story. But fucking, I believe there are ways to, I think there is spirituality to be distilled out of the psychedelic experience. Like, I do believe that. I just know that it's not for me soon.
Right.
You know, I think I've had all my psychedelic spirituality. I like the idea of because I haven't curated that much sober spirituality, you know, and
Sure.
I don't really go for it as much as I probably should or could. I kind of like keep it next to where I am rather than really pursuing sober spirituality. And I don't want to speak out of time with our thing. Because I know you're a rabbi. You studied to be a rabbi. Did you get clean before that, or were you using when you were in rabbinical school?
I was back in getting fat. So I was back. So what happened was, at the end of high school, there was a girl that said, you're a drug addict, even though I don't even know how a weed smoker is a drug addict, but I guess.
I knew a lot of people who were, when I was in treatment for heroin, there were, you know, it was sad to me, but there were kids there that were just stoners.
Yeah.
And you know it's not going to go well for a stoner who's in rehab with heroin addicts.
No, not at all. So I was a stoner, and she's like, you're a drug addict. I was like, fuck you, no, I'm not. And I stopped it, and I followed her to Israel to go to yeshiva, which is seminary. And so every time I took something out, I replaced it with something else. So I went through a phase where my drug of choice was religion, right? And then I added food to it.
How old were you at when you went to yeshiva?
17 and a half, 17.
And at that
18.
point, had any of your consumption of alcohol or drugs was it ever like far gone at that point?
No, I didn't think I was an addict at all. I didn't even consider it at all.
You were just like a heightened person, obsessive,
suicidal tendencies.
Okay.
Since a young age, I was like, I always fantasized about it, never planned it, but that later on in the story I did, but it was fantasies.
So you go to Israel to study yeshiva, but that's not rabbinical school, is it?
So yeah, you can during that process, and I started the process. And then I came back and finished the process.
What made you want to do it, though?
So it was interesting. The rabbi who gave me the test and ordained me asked me that. I said, I've given my mom so much heartache her whole life, I thought I'd give her some pleasure.
So you did it for your mother?
I did it for my mother.
How old were you when you decided to do it?
20.
And were you thinking, this is what I'm going to do with my life?
Absolutely not. I told him I'll never use this in my life.
But you had enough foresight to know that you could be a rabbi and a real estate developer and a rehab owner and a cokehead. You could do all of those things.
Well, I wasn't yet about a cokehead, but yeah.
What I mean is,
Yeah, totally.
But when I was a kid, I never thought if I was going to be a talk show host, I wasn't going to develop properties. Also, it was never in my head that I could do more than one thing.
Oh yeah, it was never in my head that I can only do one thing.
So you were like, I'm going to study. What was rabbinical school like?
Boring as hell.
Okay.
We studied esoteric laws of, I don't know, how do you slaughter animals and if it's kosher or not.
Okay.
You know. And,
amazing.
Yeah. And the laws of the Sabbath, which, you know, it gets very detailed in minutia. And I'm not a detail guy.
No, me neither.
So he tested me. I passed the test. I did cheat. And he asked me, and I said, hey, doing it for my mom. I'm never going to use this in my life.
If you cheat, what did you cheat on in school in general?
Everything.
But if you're cheating in rabbinical school, because that says I believe in God, that says I'm a spiritual, religious person, doesn't God not like that? Like, how do you make peace with that?
You know, I always made peace with everything through substances.
Okay, so
right?
in that situation.
Because I've been a Jekyll and Hyde throughout my entire history. I was never a bad guy. I was a good guy that did bad things. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, to you it did. It was your rationalization.
It was my rationalization. So, and I didn't feel good about the bad shit. So I needed to feed it somehow. I didn't really care. I didn't consider cheating in rabbinical school bad because I didn't even really want it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like I've never had a great comprehension of God as a capital G/D. I've more just I've only recently really come to embrace God as everything, never as a creative, whatever that expression is, an actual being. Like, it was never an entity. God was never an entity to me. When you were in rabbinical school, was God an entity?
Yes.
But you just didn't think God would care if you cheated.
God to me now is the father I always wanted.
Okay.
Right? So...
Is your dad still alive?
No, he passed away.
I'm sorry.
So the father I've always wanted was a guy that I'm always there. He loves me unconditionally. He doesn't support me unconditionally, right? He tells me when I fuck up, but he doesn't let me think he doesn't love me because I fucked up. That's God to me. God to me then was a scorecard, right? It was, if I do good, I get brownie points, and if I do bad, he's going to beat my ass.
It's like Catholic God kind of thing.
I guess. I don't even know. I had to have the constant scale.
But I'm saying you weren't worried that you'd get the ass beating for cheating in rabbinical school.
I probably did, but I still wanted to get the credit. What you thought of me was way more important than what I thought of me. Right. So the fact that I got the degree was way more important
than how
shitty I felt about getting it.
Right. Okay. So you're a rabbi.
If I was rich, right? How I got rich made no difference. It's just that I was rich.
Was that a big ambition of yours at that point?
100%.
Was that like the biggest ambition?
Yes.
And you were like, fuck it. You must have been very advanced though, because you're like, fuck it. I'm going to be really rich, and I'll be a rabbi too. Why not?
Why not?
And
exactly.
And how old are you when you get is it ordained?
Yeah.
So how old were you at that point?
21.
So did you go to college also?
I did. I didn't finish.
So you go to college. So what made you go? I'm just curious. What made you go from college to rabbinical school? Was it seriously just to please your mother, or was there a thought? You don't remember.
I can make it up.
Right.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is I was always uncomfortable wherever I was at, and I always needed to be on to the next thing. I remember 16 years old. We snuck into the Seventh Veil, which was the best strip club in L.A. at the time. And I got in there, and it's what paradise for a 16-year-old. And I wanted out the second I got in there. Like wherever I was at, I needed the next thing. Right. I could never stay present for longer than 10 seconds to enjoy, unless I was high.
And when did you so you didn't make a conscious decision to stop using drugs. You just kind of drifted away from it. When did you get really into it?
So actually, I didn't use cocaine as a kid. All my friends were using it. My non-Jewish friends were using it. There was a TV show called Fame.
Sure.
And Leroy from Fame snorted.
Yeah, I was really into it. My sister went to LaGuardia, so I just
want you to know that you just showed your age. Because I asked somebody today about the TV show Fame, and they started laughing, saying, "What is that?"
Dude, I remember very clearly getting sick in school and lying in the bed watching Fame, eating plates.
I want to live forever.
I like the TV show more than the movie, personally.
I never saw the movie.
Yeah, the movie wasn't as good as the TV show.
So Leroy snorted cocaine on the show and got a bloody nose, and I made up he died. And
it was scary. It scared you.
Yeah, probably saved my life. So fast forward, I lose a lot of weight. I need to replace it with something, and I start drinking heavily. And I become a scotch connoisseur while I finish the bottle of scotch. And then scotch is too many calories. I switched to vodka. I'm on a 2-day bender, and some girl says to me, "Try cocaine, it'll help you." And I was like, sure.
It'll help you do what?
It'll help you drink more. It'll help you feel better. I didn't even know. It was just, it'll help you.
Uh-huh.
And I remember literally going into the bathroom of my hotel room. I don't know why I went into the bathroom, but I went into the bathroom of my hotel room, and I put it on the sink, and I snorted a line, and Clark Kent went into the phone booth, and Superman came out. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and I was so pissed off.
that you hadn't done
I
before.
hadn't done it 20 years earlier, right?
Right. And it would have taken care of the weight, everything.
man.
Right. That's so funny.
Yeah, and I figured out early how to come down off coke, right? You take coke enough, and then you take a Xanny and go to sleep. So it was perfect.
You have that magic moment, because I had that magic moment with weed, with pills, with heroin. You had that magic moment with coke and alcohol, and like
Just coke.
just the coke.
I mean, the coke, and I never did. I did coke alone by itself twice. So coke really enabled me to drink more, and that combination, I really thought I was invincible.
Did coke become like a habit? Like did it become
Coke
an everyday
became
thing?
Not an everyday thing, but for sure an every weekend thing. I'm the guy that wants too many, a million's not enough, but I can say no.
Right.
Or not say no, I can wait.
Right. Well, it's, an addict is an addict, and obviously,
for sure.
And obviously, you knew you had to be done with it.
I didn't know I had to be done with it. I went from being really rich to really, I don't want to call it poor, but poor. Yeah, never mind. I went from being really wealthy to literally not being able to pay the DWP bill.
How did that happen?
A series of events that, if you look back at it, don't make any sense. I can't blame it on drugs. City of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania filed bankruptcy, and they were my largest tenant. Like, you can't make that shit
It was
up.
a series of unfortunate events.
A series of unfortunate events that I'm sure I could have prevented had I been smarter, but I can't blame it on drugs.
But it was that series of unfortunate events that made you reassess your life.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that
was the greatest gift that ever happened to me, ultimately.
And it wasn't the drug's fault, which is just really interesting, because normally in a situation like this, you have a total fucking drug addict fuck everything up, and they're like, the only way I'm going to fix my life is by getting off of drugs. You were using coke on the weekends, and your business fell apart, and you were like, I better fucking get this shit together.
I wish it was that easy. I actually wanted to be out of here, and I bought life insurance with intent to kill myself in the summer of 2007, knowing that
you had kids at that point.
Yeah, 3.5.
So what were you going to do? First of all, I'm sorry. That's terrible.
It's funny.
It's not funny.
No, it's funny.
Well,
I mean, come on. It's funny because I was willing to wait 2 years to kill myself because life insurance wouldn't pay.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, so there's something called the contestability period in life insurance.
Because if you get life insurance and then you die, they're going to assume that you did it to get your family some money.
Exactly. So they're not going to pay the first 2 years. They're just going to refund you the premium.
So what was your plan?
My plan was to go skiing, take a bunch of benzos, and just, somehow not make it off the mountain.
No, I'm sure it wouldn't be hard.
Because I didn't want anybody to know I killed myself. Right? I didn't want the shame around it. I just wanted out of here.
And that was the plan, though.
Yeah.
When you bought the life insurance, that was the plan.
It was the plan. So because I had to wait 2 years, I went to therapy. And unbeknownst to me, my therapist had 20-some-odd years sober.
What was your benzo consumption like?
Benzo, Percocet, Vicodin. I had gout, so whenever I had gout, I probably would take 15 Vicodin, 20 Vicodin. Percocet was 1 or 2 and a shot or 2 of tequila. Really, it speeds it up. It really does a good job. Benzos were to come down off coke.
But it wasn't like you weren't like fucking eating pills every day. That wasn't
when I go on an airplane. If it was around. If I was hanging out with you and you go, I got a benzo, I was like, hit me with.
But you wouldn't wake up in the morning and be like, I need this today.
No,
right. But you were miserable, and where do you trace the misery to?
The misery really started all the way at 8 years old. To be honest,
and it never left.
It never left. I felt that I didn't belong. I felt that if you really knew me, you'd run.
Right.
I was a piece of shit. In my mind, I was just a piece of shit. And I was not a good person. And I was not worthy.
You did the things that you thought a piece of shit does because you were so uncomfortable.
Correct.
Okay, and then how many kids did you have in 2007?
I had 3 kids.
You had 3 kids, and you were miserable, and you were like, everybody's better off if I'm not here, and exactly. They get the money from this thing.
Bottom line is the only reason I'm here is to pay their bills because I have nothing else of value to give them.
That's sad.
Now I can't pay their bills. Yeah, it was sad.
And you couldn't pay their bills, so you bought the policy.
Correct.
So you go to therapy, and the therapist is in recovery.
And I say to the therapist, I'm a true narcissist. I've not done anything good in my life without balancing out the bad. And he looks at me and he says, your hardware's fine. Your software's severely fucked up. You want to do something about it? And I said, yeah, you have 19 months.
Because that's when I have clearance. I have clearance
I'm out.
To get the family paid.
I'm out.
Right.
And he basically said, you have a coke problem. And I just stopped. I said, no, I don't. I just stopped. And he goes, you have a drinking problem. And I said, yeah, I do. But I'm not stopping that. I need something to knock off the edge, the pain, to just survive, you know? And he sent me to a 12-step meeting. I came back and I said, you're a real asshole. Not only have I lost my money and my dignity, you're going to compare me to a junkie on the street. Did he send you to Narcotics Anonymous? No, he sent me to an AA meeting.
Okay, but it was full of junkies.
No, he didn't tell me which one. So
right.
I went to a late night meeting because I figured if I go late night, nobody's going to know who I am.
Right.
Like I'm some celebrity that when I walk into an AA room,
they're like, holy shit.
Oh my God,
Rabbi Asher's here.
Right. Bottom line is, I'd say at 99.5% of the AA meetings I've been to, nobody knows who I am.
Yeah. I went into an AA meeting this morning, fucking packed room on 11th Street, and in my head, I'm like, I have this podcast, these are my people, and nobody fucking knows anything. It's like that's such a fucked up feeling because then you catch yourself thinking like they know me, they don't know me, and why should it's like such a weird thing. It's funny though because even before I had the podcast, I would walk in like I was somebody, right. And I was certainly not.
I always tell somebody, being famous in AA is no feather on your cap.
Well, it's fucking funny though. But I always love those people, and I'm always so jealous of those people who walk into the AA room and they're like posing and put like their Isaac on the Love Boat and pointing their fingers at everybody. I'm like, man, I should come to this meeting more often. You know what I mean? So I could really be part of the cool kids in AA. But I bet you that fucking fucks with a lot of people.
Oh, for sure it does. Listen, if you want to get scientific for 1 second, we are socially uncomfortable people. And now you're telling us to be social. Right? Addicts in general are isolators, right? So it's a disease of isolation or whatever. I'm calling it a disease. I'm not making a statement of it as a disease or not, but it's a disease of isolation. And now you're telling people go to a meeting and get a sponsor, right? Get friendly. That's insane. So yeah, for sure. It screws a lot of people, especially when they see the guy, as you were suggesting, it was like, I'm never going to be that. I wasn't that in school, right? I wasn't that in temple or whatever. I'm never going to be that. So I'm fucked.
I love the idea of being it. And I'm incredibly social naturally. Mm-hmm. I just am. But I'm really good one-on-one, or I'm really good with my close friends. Once there's a lot of people, I get very self-conscious of weird social dynamics.
Me too.
I get bugged out. Like I love being social. I loved isolating, but I love talking to people more, but it's like my head does overtime work on what I have to talk to the next person. I have to finish with you and get to them, and like it matters. It doesn't matter except that I go nuts. So you go back to the therapist and you're just like you fucking dick. Who do you think I am? I'm not that fucked.
I'm not that fucked. The guy was shooting dope.
But meanwhile, you want to kill yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the irony of the whole thing, right? I am as fucked, but I don't see myself as fucked. And yet then I say to him, hold on a second, 613 commandments versus 12 steps. I'll take 12 steps any day.
When did it become appealing, though?
The 12-step idea became appealing immediately.
Because you were a guy, you were a Bible guy.
Yeah, I like this idea of, I wanted everything to be immediate gratification, right?
But shit on the wall, it's like the Torah kind of thing, the scrolls.
Yeah,
it's like
it's funny because a lot of people say to me, it's so Christian. I was like, it's so Jewish.
Well, Christianity is pretty fucking Jewish at its core.
Right, it's Jewish without Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
Christianity is Jewish with Jesus.
I got you. Yeah. I'm with you.
Whatever. And so
people say it's so Christian because they don't know anything about Judaism.
Yes, and
And there's a lot
They're
of
looking for a way out.
Right. And so at what point did all of the recovery stuff become something that you like doing?
March 18th, 2008.
Well, what happened?
I was drunk again, miserable, on the floor, wanting to die. And I couldn't, and I had that moment. I went back. It was 9 o'clock at night. I don't know if it was that day or the next day. I went back to that same meeting. And some guy walked over to me at the meeting and goes, let me take you to a meeting where you can meet a sponsor that you'll relate to more. And I made a sponsor the next morning.
Well, what made that meeting more appropriate?
The morning meeting was more appropriate just because there were some working people there, and there were people that I could identify with. Most of them weren't living downtown and shooting dope. There were drinkers, there were cokers.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, yet it's interesting. I continued to go to that 10 p.m. late night meeting for the first year every day.
Well, those that became your people.
Yeah, I loved those people. I really loved those people. I wanted to save every single one of those people too.
Was that when you got there? You're like, these guys are fucked. I will save them all.
Yeah, I've had major Godfather Savior complex.
Forever?
Oh yeah. Because if I do for you, you owe me.
That was the thinking. Or you'll like me if I save you.
You'll like me and you'll owe me. Or you'll never leave me too.
Right.
As long as you need me,
right.
You won't leave me.
And so, but you turned your life into a career of helping people.
So I actually picked up a book called The Holy Thief, written by Rabbi Mark Borowitz, and I sent him an email that I wanted to meet him. And he said, why you want to meet? And I said, because my experience has been that all rabbis are full of shit. Are you full of shit too? And he goes, why don't we study together?
He's like, I want to meet you now.
Right?
Yeah.
And we started studying together at this place called Beit Teshuvah in L.A., and it was the most spiritual, aside from Alcoholics Anonymous, the most spiritual place I've ever been. And the reason I say Alcoholics, the most spiritual place, is where else are you going to go in the world where people of every different walk of life are there for one reason, just to get better.
And then it becomes like they're there to help the next guy.
Yeah,
it's like the most spiritual thing.
There's nothing to me more spiritual, because to me spirituality is service.
But also just the idea of a diverse bunch of people, it makes it's just so beautiful.
Right? It's
I agree.
Yeah. And it was the first time in my life that nobody knew who my father was. You know, nobody cared who I was. They didn't ask what my net worth was, how much money I made. It didn't make a fucking difference. And it was so, I don't know, it's just still, I can't get over the fact that there are people like that in the world, and a lot of us.
So what did you do?
So we started studying, and I said, Rabbi, I don't want to go back into deal making. I'll binge on that too. So what am I going to do with my life? And he goes, you're going to open up sober livings. And I said, Rabbi, I'm 8 months sober. I got no experience.
That was his plan?
Yeah.
Why was that his plan?
I have no idea. So I said, I have 8 months sober. I got no experience. Who's going to send me clients? He goes, you were born to do this. Go get a fucking house, and I fucking will send you clients.
And that was the beginning?
That was the beginning. And the spoons went missing in the first couple weeks.
That's going to happen.
Yeah. And I was like...
That's the cost of doing business.
Right. And I closed the door, and I was like, what? Guys, forks, knives, bowls, everything's cool. Why you... What's the spoons? And they all start laughing at me. And I was like, well, nobody's leaving here until I find out. And then they explained to me that that's how you cook drugs.
Yeah?
That's how naive I was to that whole process.
Let me ask you this. When did the self-awareness kick in on the Godfather complex? And has it? And if it has, what did you change? Because you're still in the helping people business.
So it kicked in. It started to kick in about 1.5 years and 2 years in, when I turned to somebody who works with me. I said, look at all the lives we save. And he looked at me and he goes, what the fuck did you just say? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Well, who did you say it to?
Somebody who worked for me. His name was Christian. And he said, are you crazy? We're here lucky to just support somebody through their own journey.
So Christian had balls to say that to the boss.
He did.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, screw you, you know.
You're like, Christian, you should go find another job.
Yeah, who, you know, and the defense mechanism came up. And then I said, you know what, you're right. And I'm just a regular guy. Stop. And I continued in therapy, and the Godfather complex, let's say as follows. It's not gone, right? It's quiet. It's quieter. And I realize that if I give to you for fun and for free, without an expectation of return, I actually feel good. When I give you with an expectation of return,
it hurts.
I feel shitty every single time. So,
I think it's fascinating that thing in 12-step, because it's so fucking weird, and the whole, it's a selfish program, but you only keep what you have by giving it away. But also when you give it away, you get, and I operate very selfishly, and like I call people because I'm bored, and I call people because I need distraction, and I'm using them to help them, and I don't even know, I honestly, with Dopey, people feel some kind of thing, but I never feel like I'm actually doing anything except feeding my ego. The whole thing, I like having a show. I like that people like the show. I don't really feel like I help anybody. And when I hear it, it makes me uncomfortable, to be honest with you. I think I do this stuff where it's like calling an addict because I'm told to, and I want to feel like I'm checking the box because I get scared that I'm going to fuck everything up.
Right.
You just started a podcast called Showing Up with Asher. Is it Showing Up with Asher Gottesman, or just Showing Up with Asher?
I think it's Showing Up with Asher G.
Asher G. And why'd you do it? What was the point?
We have this notion that recovery is only for drug addicts. And I want to change that conversation. Stop pointing out that recovery is for everybody.
Right. Everybody goes through something, and everybody wants to get to the other
we
side.
all can get better. And the good news for recovering people, drug addicts, is you have to change your life, right?
Well, you don't have to.
No, well, to get to be in recovery, you have to.
Right.
The bad news is you have to change your life, right? The good news is you get to change your life. The bad news is you have to change your life, so to say. Yet everybody at some point in time in their life takes an inventory. So why not let's move this process forward where we work together, we take an inventory of our lives, and we actually put meaning into it. So and everybody has that story.
And it's fun to hear these stories.
Yeah,
these transformational.
I love it, and to me, it answers questions for me. It's not, I don't have the answers. When am I spending too much time helping other alcoholics and ignoring my family? When am I spiritually unfit because I'm meditating too much because I blah blah blah? It's not. I don't know. So let's. And I hear from so many diverse, different people about moments in their lives that are so cool.
I think it's great. I do. I think it's great just to be in touch with people. Like, one of my favorite things about doing Dopey is just being in touch with people and meeting them. And if it's the listeners or the people who I get to meet in person like you, it's just cool. Or just we were talking before, I never met a bunch of people that I talk to all the time.
Right.
And one day I'll meet them and it's like I've met them, but I haven't. And it's like it makes the world a little bit closer. And I like to know people. I crave action, and I craved action even when I was using drugs. I just didn't get any action. I just got high. But now I crave any kind of interaction. And I think, doing a podcast is just adding a component, and it's touching more people. And it seems like that's your passion as well.
My passion is really to be connected. I want to bring to the world two things: connection and safety. That's it.
Do you think that there's any terrible drug story that you'd like to tell the audience?
Terrible drug story.
I think the Ralph OxyContin story isn't yours, but I love that story. But if there's a Dopey story that you had in mind, tell it now.
I will tell a funny story. Okay. How does that sound?
That's
I probably did put my life in danger. So there's a guy named Suge Knight. Suge Knight was a Crip which is a big. He was actually in the car.
Is he still alive or is he dead?
He's alive in jail.
Okay.
Oh, I got another story after that. A recovery, funny story, and a drug addict story. So, Suge was in the car when Tupac was shot. Okay, he was the head of Death Row Records.
I'm familiar with Suge Knight.
Oh, okay, cool. He's in jail for the rest of his life for running somebody over on like a Kendrick Lamar video or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. I'm coked off my head. I'm in a club in Hollywood, and he walks in with his posse. And I was like, oh, dude, that's Suge Knight. I literally went over to him. I put my hands on his forehead and said the priestly blessing in Hebrew and kissed his forehead.
What did he say? Did he say, nah, homie?
So no, it was funnier than that. It was awesome. And his homies, his boys are looking at me like, we got to take this guy out.
Uh-huh.
And he looks at me and he goes, you my rabbi.
Did he know you?
No, never.
I
had no clue.
But he enjoyed the rabbinical intimacy. Yes, that's awesome.
So that's a Suge Knight story.
Did you ever see him again?
Oh yeah, we used to hang out.
Is that true?
Yeah, I swear. We used to go meet for drinks, and I mean, probably. See, Addict and me, probably 5 times.
Okay, but you were hanging out with Suge Knight. How was he? Was he cool? A nice
to
guy?
me, he was totally cool.
All right.
You know, I didn't see
Didn't
the
he
dark
hang
side.
Vanilla Ice over the balcony by his
Yes, he
ankles?
did. That's how he got him to sign.
Right.
Yeah.
God bless Suge Knight.
Yeah, God bless Suge.
You write him? You ever reach out to him in jail?
No.
You should write him a letter. Be like, dear homie, it's your rabbi. If I can help you out, send him a Bible, something. You should do it.
I should go visit him.
Why not?
Yeah.
He might like that.
I'll take the direction.
That's it's a mitzvah. You give
It's a mitzvah.
It's nice.
A mitzvah to visit Suge Knight.
Yeah, do it. So
who's the rabbi now?
I don't know.
So, and then the funnier, a crazy story of drug addiction.
Dude, would you ever consider visiting Suge Knight in jail?
100%.
Dude, you should do it.
I will.
If I was in LA, I would beg you to take me.
Well,
I don't know when I'll be in LA, and I want Suge Knight to get some visitors soon. I worry about him a lot. You don't know how lonely it is in the can. He's a villain to the world, but he might just be a good guy who's done some bad things.
Yeah,
like the rest of us.
Who am I to judge him?
They really paint a terrible picture of him in the NWA movie, though. They really
great movie, though.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. I wonder what kind of person he really is. I would see that interests me. Go to fucking prison and visit Suge Knight.
Okay, done.
Please,
I promise.
It will be fulfilling to you.
I promise.
All right, we'll try.
Deal.
Don't make a promise.
Why? I promise I'll try. Yeah. I can't promise I'll get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I promise I will make my effort.
I think it'll be cool. It'll be a great story.
It will, right? Yeah. We'll come back onto Dopey and share about it.
I want to hear it. Totally.
Maybe they'll let us record with Suge Knight.
Dude, that could be a thing.
Maybe he found God in jail.
Well, I mean, lots of people have. So what's your funny recovery story?
Scary funny story to me was I had a guy that was a cage fighter, just got out of jail, and I knew he was using drugs. And again, I had savior mentality, and I just couldn't prove it. So I woke him up in the middle of the night to test him because he had fake pee, something. I don't know what happened. And he literally looked like he was going to eat me.
So what happened?
So I said to him, well, you can kill me, but you're not going to kill everybody in the house. Or you can get honest with me.
Did he get honest? Did he test?
He started crying he's like, dude, I've been using da-da-da.
It was surrender. It was that
fun. And now the funny part of the story is, so I get him into treatment feeling I'm doing a good thing. He literally sold drugs to the entire treatment center.
And what's happened to this guy now? Is it Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Yeah, he's dead.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And how did Ralph die?
Ralph had 2 years sober and then got complacent and then started using again. And then he went to treatment. He went to detox, actually. And he said, Asher, can I come back to your place? And I was like, not unless you go to treatment.
It's
getting
too
at
much.
It's too much. And his first night in sober living, he didn't wake up.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I miss him. I flew his body back. Funny was, his funeral, you would think that he was the rabbi of his town. And that's another unfortunate thing, right? That's another reason for showing up is drug addicts are not bad people. You don't have to deny that they died of drug use. You don't have to deny
It's
that
not
they're
a shame.
drug addicts. Okay, so they fucked, so they use drugs. They're not bad guys.
Did your parents ever have a reaction to your drugs? Like, my nice Jewish boy, how could this happen?
Yeah, this was their reaction. At 14 years old, we're at the Shabbos table, which Saturday you have lunch, and they were talking about the marijuana problem in the Jewish day schools, and they called me Ashi at the time, and they said, "Hey, Ashi, do you ever use drugs?" I said, "Yeah, I actually smoked weed in my room right now." And everyone went dead silent, and maybe 30 seconds later, my mom goes, "Ha, ha, ha, ha," and it was never discussed again.
What about after you got sober, it wasn't discussed?
You didn't really use drugs. I know you drank too much.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
So there's a lot of shame and secrecy around it, and not for me.
And what about deaths on your hands in this business? There must be countless deaths.
So many.
And how do you move through it?
I sometimes get numb to it.
Yeah.
Some hit me harder than others.
Sure.
And who am I to say they're not in a better place?
Right, exactly.
Somebody comes to me suicidal, I don't say to them, "Don't kill yourself."
What do you say?
Tell me more about it.
Right. Well, it's like,
let's talk about it.
You can't say to a person who's it's like you're an alcoholic, you're a drug addict, and you go to a meeting and you tell the person, "Well, go out and try some, if you don't know you're an alcoholic, go try some controlled drinking." Or you don't say that to a suicidal person, but maybe you do, because probably most suicidal people are just hurting and they don't really want to die.
There was a AA story I heard about the guy that said to the suicidal guy, goes, wait, let me bring my gun over so you could do it a little easier or something like that. No, that's not what...
The AA brings his gun? I got you.
That's not my story.
Right.
When somebody comes to me who is suicidal, I believe they just want to be heard. Right? By and large.
They want the same connection that you want.
Yeah, and they don't feel they can have any connections. They want to be out of this world.
Right.
That's all.
Asher, it's a joy to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And it's so cool, that you get to help so many people all over the place.
That I get to be there while they help themselves.
Well, that you offer help. We'll call it that. I don't think you're a savior. I think you help people. That's good. It's not crazy. You can help people and not save them.
I can, and I want to remember and remind myself, because I get ahead of myself.
I hear you. I got you, and I appreciate that. And thank you. It's good to have you.
Take care.
Right on. All right, so that was Rabbi Asher. And this episode has been willy-nilly all over the place, but the best is yet to come, because my favorite Dopey guest, who hasn't been on the show this year, has decided to do me a rare favor and step in to the end of the show. Welcome back, Linda.
Thank you.
The love of my life. The beauty of all beauties. Well, how are you?
I'm tired, but I'm glad to be back on the show.
You're glad you missed being on the show.
I love being on the show.
You got to sit close to the mic. You love being on the show.
Of course.
Well, the thing is that
not when it's almost midnight.
The night of the show is going to come out.
And
it's coming out in 5 seconds.
And you come downstairs and say, "Time to be on the show."
Well, that's why I'm surprised you're doing it. Why are you doing it?
Because I love to be on the show, but I'd prefer a little notice next time.
Notice never works, because I'm always running from one thing to the next, and you have baby,
right?
Nora.
It's better this way, because then I don't get nervous. Like, I'm not nervous right now, and I'm usually very nervous.
And there's no agenda. And so far this episode, just to recap for you, because you don't know what the hell's going on, we had Brad on the show who said who basically said I stole Dopey from him.
Oh, okay.
Which I kind of did. And
he's still talking about that?
He can't stop.
I feel like that's been going on,
I know. He told me it was like years and years ago. I was on the...
Did he talk about it on this episode too?
Yeah. He wanted to tell the Dopey Nation. He wanted to tell the Dopey Nation. And then we also went down memory lane, because Brad was my close friend.
Right.
Who suffered... he was my partner at work, and he suffered because I was a drug addict. Right. So we told some stories. And then we had Asher, who's a rabbi who runs some sober livings, and he helps people get better. And he talked about childhood trauma and stuff. You would have liked that.
Yeah, no, I would like that.
That's the quick recap.
It sounds like a good show.
And here we are at the very end, at the sweet, sweet ending with my sweet, sweet Linda.
Okay, Okay. Well, what are we doing?
Why don't you tell the Dopey Nation what we've been doing? This crazy... Me and Linda decided to do this crazy fucking thing. And we flew to Las Vegas and we got married.
No.
No. We did this crazy...
It's almost as crazy.
I don't know what happened, but it's, it came from Brad. Brad had last year made a New Year's resolution to stop eating carbs and sugar.
Did he know what that diet was?
He didn't go full keto.
Okay.
He just stopped eating carbs and sugar. He eats fruit, he eats meat, he eats vegetables, whatever.
Okay.
He doesn't go full keto. Something happened to me last Saturday.
Wow, you're like so snazzy with the lingo. Full keto.
What?
I don't know. You just
fucking Linda's so full of shit. She joined
he didn't go full keto.
She joined the friends.
Did you go full keto?
Until tonight, I did. And
that was those were keto brownies.
You will eat something that says keto and say it's keto because it says
I made them from scratch. I know every ingredient in them.
Linda and I decided to go on this keto diet, and I never thought that I would. I've never been on a diet,
right?
And I never thought. I'm almost like ashamed to be on a diet. Like I'm ashamed of it because I don't know. It's like there's something very like. First of all, very like womanly about going on a diet to me. Like it's not a masculine thing. I prefer like the idea of not caring. Like that's
just
always
like eating like shit is a very masculine thing.
in my mind. For some reason, it is. And the idea of taking care of myself isn't masculine.
Right.
And the idea of going on a crazy no carb, no sugar diet just doesn't seem masculine to me.
Well, no, so the Facebook group you were going to make fun of me about the
Friends
keto,
of Keto.
No, it's Keto for Beginners.
Isn't it called Friends of Keto?
No, it's called Keto for Beginners. And then I'm also on a Keto for Beginners women only because there's a lot of like people trying to hook up and stuff, and a lot of.
And you're posting all the time.
I know. Well,
hey guys, what kind of cheese should I be eating?
No, I wrote, let's talk cheese.
I can't believe what you do on that thing.
I need the support. This diet's really hard.
You okay?
If anybody's done keto, it sounds very doable. But as time goes on, it gets much harder. I think I posted about this too on the group
on Friends of Keto.
On day 4, I went to the supermarket. And it was really...
guys, I'm really overwhelmed in the supermarket.
Does anybody else get really anxious in the supermarket?
And you knew the message. Linda is so good at this stupid social media because she knows when she says one thing, everybody's going to respond to it. Like that's your...
because I'm good at tugging at the heartstrings. The heartstrings and
You're in touch with the Joe America's response to something. Like
I don't know. I like to put feelers out there and see what happens. And a lot of people understood what I was saying. They said, one woman goes, I don't go to the supermarket. I do have the food delivered to her house because she can't handle like going to a supermarket while doing keto because it's very overwhelming. Because you think, and so here's the craziest part about this diet is when you hear carbs and sugar, right? Sugar is sugar, whatever, we know that. But carbs, I'm thinking, all right, it shouldn't be so hard to not eat
just
like
bread
and
rice.
Pasta and all that shit. But now all of a sudden we have to like figure out how many carbs are in the vegetable that we want to eat. And we have to figure out a number of carbs in there's like fruit you can't eat now. And then like...
you can't eat any fruit, really.
You can eat like a little bit of like...
raspberries.
You can eat like raspberries.
I don't even like raspberries.
And like you have to stop drinking milk, but you can have heavy whipping cream because that doesn't have carbs. But it's a lot of work.
The truth is
to do it right.
For me, I've never done anything like this. It's like kicking. It doesn't feel like kicking drugs, but it's like it's a new way of life.
But remember, everybody, about Dave's major. I mean, I've always, when I've come on, always talked about Dave's sugar addiction, and so I'm pretty impressed that he just stopped eating sugar. And one of the things he said to me, because I did it's called a Candida diet. I did it like a couple of years ago where it was just cutting out sugar. And I was eating a lot of sugar. I was eating really bad. And I remember feeling a little bit of withdrawal coming off the sugar. I don't eat that much sugar anymore, so I didn't feel too many of the effects now, but I was worried about the effects he was going to have.
Because I eat so much
He
sugar.
eats so much sugar. And not even so much the carbs, but mainly just, just sweets, just chocolate. And so I was talking to him about it on like day 3. I think we're at day 6 right now.
Yeah.
On day 3. And he said, I think because I've withdrew, is that right? Withdrawn off so many hard drugs that this is really not that big of a deal. And I think that that's a really cool thing, and that's kind of a way to sort of make it show if you can recover from
heroin or pills or cigarettes or whatever.
But, that you can then kind of do a diet of this magnitude, and it might not be so hard for you because of what you were able to endure in your past.
I was mentioning that to Sam, and Sam said there's so many people that still struggle who got to kick X, Y, and Z. Anyway, so we're 6 days in. I haven't had any sugar, carb, fucking fruit, anything in 6 days. And I've like changed like my total diet. And I think I've gained weight somehow. Like, I don't feel like things are happening. I like the supernatural effect of the keto, the idea that once you hit this fucking ketosis, then all of a sudden your weight just falls off.
You go into this place called Ketosis.
It's like the place I've always wanted to go.
And it's such a, like when the people on the group that I'm on are like, I'm there's all these signs of being in ketosis, and like you get like bad breath.
Your urine smells
like
worse.
All this stuff that sounds horrible. But then supposedly the weight just like drops off you really fast because how does it work? Because you can't, since you don't have any carbs and sugar in your system, which is what is usually being burned.
Your body switches to fat.
Your body switches to then burning that fat. And we're actually, part of this diet is we're eating like a shitload of fat.
I know.
Which I'm finding to be kind of nauseating. Like I'm eating a ton. I love protein. And, but you can't eat too much protein because then like that's not good for you. And so they want you to eat, as weird as it sounds, tons of freaking fat, like bacon fat and lard
and whole eggs and whipping cream
and whipping cream and mayo, and it's like, and if you're like not doing well on this diet, they tell you to like eat more fat.
That's what they say.
They say that if you don't have energy or you're not losing weight, eat more. It's your whole mindset around eating gets warped, and Dave and I, our saving grace, which is such a cool thing that people should try, is called the Bulletproof Coffee, which has become this new thing for us, where you're supposed to drink 1 to 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter, coffee, and heavy whipping cream, and that should be your morning coffee. And people
live by it.
Freaking swear by it, that it gives you energy and like.
I like it. I do it without the butter because butter in the coffee just seems like too much. And I don't do 1 or 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. I just do like a teaspoon and a half.
Right.
But it still feels so greasy.
It's just so gross.
So, I mean, it is working. I have to say, I felt like my head was together, but then on my catering job today, I forgot the fucking silverware at the store. I forgot the trays for the side dishes at the store. I forgot the fucking cutting board. And it's a carving event. I had to call my dad to come down to the event with the cutting boards from his house today.
You should put a post on the group.
I'm not posting
and
in the
ask
group.
that if it affects your memory.
Dopey Nation, if you're on keto or you think this is crazy, write an email to dopeypodcast@gmail.com.
I'll send you my keto brownie recipe we made today.
It was good. But the fucked up thing is, like, this whole week, people have been posting in the Dopey Nation all this, like, serious food stuff. Some dude posted fucking the brookie made with Reese's peanut butter cups. And I like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote me an email and sent me an ad for Trader Joe brookies. I'm like, leave me alone.
Yeah. And people sometimes will send Dave like chocolate, like fans will send Dave chocolate. Don't do that until he's done ketoing.
Dude, when I'm done, if I can do keto for a month, I'm going to get fat as a house when it's done.
Right.
Because
that's what happens. People put on so much weight when they stop. So you're in trouble.
Well, we'll see what happens. Anyway.
Sorry if that was too much keto talk. But
yeah, I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion about ketosis, the magical land of ketosis. And like, do you guys ever feel ashamed about taking care of yourself? Like, I think that's a weird thing.
Well, that's also,
like, I don't like to brush my hair. I don't like to tuck in my shirt. I like to be like a mess. It's like, it makes me comfortable.
Well, that's, I mean, where you can make it an interesting conversation is that it's
self-loathing.
No, not self-loathing.
Self-hatred?
It's like the opposite of that. Almost being on a diet. It's like you're
Like
putting
self-care.
you're putting so much time and energy and effort into yourself, into what you're eating, that like I feel like what you're saying is you're not used to ever treating
Caring.
yourself in that way.
But the thing about ketosis and keto and all this bullshit is it's not like moderation. It's not like I'm going to eat healthy and cut my intake. It's saying I'm going to go crazy extreme so I can lose weight as fast as possible and see if I can get into this weird revving overdrive place.
But I also wonder, adds to like an addiction piece, is that I do wonder if having an addiction history or having, being an addict, if that almost makes it, like if you're almost enjoying this more, not enjoying it, but if it's almost making you better at it because you have to be, you have to just dive full-fledged into it. Like it has to be all consuming.
Right,
it has
right.
to take over. Because this diet, like I know we keep talking about it, but it's pretty much taken over our lives for the last week. And it's actually been I've kind of enjoyed the escape of it. Like it's all I
Right.
think about. And I've been cooking. I mean, it's in a good way, but like I'm on these groups, it's actually become, I've been like a couple people reached out to me, friends I know who did it, who are trying to do it again, and they want to come on board. And so it's almost like, I don't know, do you feel like that too?
Well, I think that the difference is like Lynn, when we got on it, she like started ordering all these keto products like keto fat bomb snack.
I need all the
and the
snacks.
keto brownie and I'm like, I'm not going to fucking eat that stuff. And she's like, but Dave, it's keto. And I'm like, if I eat one of them, I'm going to eat the whole box and I'm going to blow ketosis. And I think it's very similar to, to being in recovery where you can't take anything.
And that's why Dave is kicking ass. And because he's like so within all the perimeters of what you have to be in. We won't.
I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for the.
I'm cheating a little bit here. Like I made these stupid brownies. Yes, they're keto brownies, but they're definitely not. I mean, they're definitely not 100% great to be eating on this diet.
I hope you didn't fuck up my ketosis with this fucking brownie.
But you haven't done anything wrong in 6 days.
I know it's weird.
I've had a glass of wine here and there. Like you're not supposed to do any of that stuff.
You're the queen of the keto loophole. You love the loophole in keto.
I want some keto groupies.
Is that what you're?
That's why I'm on Dopey right now.
Because you want to get
I
some.
want some keto groupies.
All right, enough with the keto. Now we're going to do a little end of the show Dopey business. I thank you all for bearing with this incredibly long marathon journey of Dopey. And but I want to do what we always do, which is a voicemail, an email, and a review. So why don't we do a voicemail first? It's a very short one. Here it is.
Hey, Dave. Have an interesting story I'd love to tell. One time I got some Vyvanse from a friend, and I had never done any kind of like stimulant other than caffeine. And I got it, and I ended up staying up about 40 hours. I don't even know how much I took, but I think I took way more than I thought I did. By the end of the 40 hours that I was up, I really want to go to sleep. And at that time, I was taking a lot of Benadryl as well, like recreationally. So I was like, okay, I'll take about 12 Benadryl, which is 300 milligrams of DPH. And then I smell something which I think is a gas leak. I start freaking the fuck out because it's 3 a.m. I don't know what to do. So I call the fire department. And by the time the fire department get here, I'm tripping ass. Like I'm seeing like dogs in the shadows and shit. I'm seeing so much weird ass shit. When the firemen start walking up the road, I think they have dogs on them. I'm seeing so much shit. And so I bring them up to the third floor of the apartment. They come in and they check the fucking, like where the heater and all that shit is. And like all that like utility shit. And they look at me and they're like, sir, you guys don't even have gas. Oh, fuck. Toodles, man.
I love that.
That's really funny.
he was smelling so bad and he was so fucked up that he smelled himself. And then it turned out he didn't even have a gas connection when he called the gas company. I love that. I love
how much he loved telling his story.
Well, he broke down.
Yeah.
I love that too. Everybody send in dopey voicemails. Keep them around 5 minutes. Make them funny and crazy. We need voicemails. Now I'm going to have my lovely, lovely partner, Linda, read a sad email.
Ketosis. That can be my new name.
You're really fucking... She's fucking obsessed with this fucking shit. Here, read this, please. It's not about keto.
Okay. Dave, I just heard This American Life episode and wanted to reach out. I've been sober for 8 years, and last year my best friend died of an overdose, fentanyl. He was the first guy I met in college. We used together for almost a decade, and then we got sober together. Ben, my friend, had 6 years of sobriety before he passed away. We started a tech company to help others get sober, and when it failed, he decided to go back out. He died within a few months of deciding to try a life of not being sober. I just wanted to connect with you and tell you I've lived through the exact experience, and you were the first person I've met that had almost the exact story as me. My wife found Ben's body, and for the last year, we've been coping with the lasting effects of this. I'm saddened you had to go through this and just wanted to let you know you were not alone. Nash.
All right, Nash, thank you, and I'm really sorry about your friend.
Yeah, he sent a picture of his friend Ben, too, and he looks like a really nice guy.
This is the time we're living in where everybody, lots of people die from this thing, and it's just a horrible thing. And thank you for the email. I hear from so many people these days talking about their friends and their family who die, and it's very special that we have this community for the people that manage to live through it, and somehow a lot of the people who survive the addiction, but the families of the people who don't somehow get strength from you guys. And it means a lot to me that we're all in touch and that this thing is happening. And when This American Life plays the show again, a ton of people listen and a ton of people draw from the well of the Dopey Nation. And it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it means a lot to me. This episode has taken us all over the place. We've gone, a million miles. And before we go, I just want to read a review, the Dopey review of the week. So this is from This American Life listener, Chelsea Pod. Hi, Dave. 5 stars, by the way. I started listening after the second airing of This American Life. The second airing. The episode on Dopey had me bawling in my car on my way to work. It really hit me hard. My husband and I got sober in January 2018. For at least a year, I claimed I was sober to help him because I didn't have a problem. Well, that's not true at all. I for sure had a problem, and this is not my first attempt at sobriety. It's working out pretty well. I'm thankful not to have alcohol in the house now that my kids are teens, but I am scared for them because they come from addict parents. Anyway, long story short, I love your podcast. I'm so sad, as I am sure you are, about Todd and Chris. You have found your calling. Keep up the good work. Oh, and you are definitely an influencer. So thank you for the review. If you guys can leave 5-star reviews, I think it does something for us. Subscribe to the show. I don't know what it does, but do it. Subscribe to the show and fucking send an email, send in voicemails, fucking follow Dopey in every place. Support Cormac on Reddit. Linda, thank you so much for giving me a beautiful life and 20 minutes of Dopey.
Thanks for having me.
Was it a joy for you?
I had a great time.
And Linda looks like she's going to come out with a podcast very soon.
Oh, stop.
Called Motherload. On living in the suburbs as a mother and things that mothers go through, including ketosis. Right?
Well,
when should they look for Motherload, Lynn?
I don't even know. In the
spring of 2025?
In the summer of 2020.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Look for Linda's podcast in the summer of 2020. Stay strong, Dopey Nation. And before we go, there's this dude who has a band called Alien Thing, and he sent me a song about his friends that died from overdoses, and it's a pretty fucking good song. I liked it.
Okay.
So we're going to close the show with that. Then I'll put Good So Bad on the end because that's my deal with Chris. And we say, stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. And here is, I hope it's called Alien Thing. You want to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everybody.
So John's in the city and he's up to no good. We think it might be something serious. While Cal's on the couch playing video games, he thinks I'm thinking something awful. He takes a break from the dishes just to scratch his ass. Now we're on to something serious. Like, do you really think a 6.6% decrease in Colorado's opioid-related overdoses isn't correlated to a nationwide increase of anti-marijuana lobby? You think I'm pissed? I'll tell you why. My friends keep dying by the dozen, which is slightly annoying. Okay, so Eric Lewis Charles took a bullet to the dome. McCall took 5 to the chest, and the rest were all from heroin. The rest were all from heroin. The rest were all from heroin. You've got a big problem! You've got a big problem! Back to Johnny in Hawaii that year. He took a break and built some tolerance. While Louis McIntyre took that lethal dose of fentanyl, Rev's dead, same with Ali, same with Brian, same with Bobby, same with RJ. To Johnny in a pig pen, that 6 months, it was a felony, and I'm so sorry, but we're not hiring. Oh, he's checking out, he's coming home, he's doing so good now. He's in the city and he's up to no good. We think he's relapsed. So said you're dying, but your claim's been denied. And if you're paying out of pocket, well, good luck, you're fucked. Guess what? Guess what? John's dead. That's not how it's not even. Yeah, John's dead now. So long and passed away. Hi. I guess we'll go on the big penitentiary scheme. See how he fares in the big pen. Let's throw him in the big penitentiary scheme. See how he fares in the big pen.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch as airplanes just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. shadows getting smaller and smaller, and it's high noon where I stand. Shadows getting smaller and smaller, and it's high noon where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be good so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad, and it's all I ever had.